Now, now I am.
Oh,
Okay. So, okay, before I forget, apart from the recording, I just want to mention that we're going to have a 2 month summer break. So that's maybe July and August. So I'll see you in the first Sunday of September.
hmm.
So the next thing I want to mention, before I forget as well, this is on YouTube, the whole thing. If you want to see it again or part of it or whatever, if you want the address, I'll send it to you. Okay, so for all those of you, first of all, welcome. For the new people joining us, we've been doing this for close to 6 years, I think, at least, and I welcome you all. And of course, I very, very much welcome people who've been with me, with us for ages. Some been here from the very, very first one, which is fantastic. So the rule is quite simple. I give an introduction for as short as I possibly can. And after that, it's open for you to talk and to disagree, agree, or whatever. So basically, I present usually a different way of looking at things that you know, but whatever. Um, I take what I call a yes, but approach. So, alternative facts. The notion of alternative facts came to worldwide attention when, after Trump's first inauguration in 2016, Kellyanne Conway, his senior counselor, defended the idea there were more people at Trump's inauguration than were at Obama's, which was blatantly untrue. When challenged, she simply said that it was an alternative fact. From a general overview, the statement is laughable. A fact is a fact, isn't it? Obviously not, it seems. A fact is typically understood as something that is true, objective, and independent of opinion. So, are facts eternal? Are they identifiable? If a fact is universally true, whatever that means, then that is as solid as it could be. Facts are the bedrock of who we are, of how we see the world, of how we manage in the world. Surely there must be something solid for us to stand on. A fact is somehow more solid, more certain than reality, reality with a big R. We somehow accept that there are different realities with a small r, but not different facts, right? But if one refers to alternative facts, the implication is that there are multiple incompatible truths about the same thing. But that implication needs to be examined. It is basically about knowledge and
Sorry.
different interpretations of the same data. An immediate question is it the same data? Can there be the same data? So let's ask, do facts exist independently of us? Example is the Earth orbits the Sun. Human opinions do not alter the fact. This view is associated with thinkers such as Aristotle and later scientific realism. My contention is that knowledge is about what is known and is not connected to truth. Knowledge is tied to the knower, to knowers, so that multiple realities, or truths, if you will, can and do coexist. This indicates that if facts are only of what is known, then different knowers must indeed hold incompatible facts. By the way, I maintain for there to be knowledge, there must be human knowers. In that framework, alternative facts would not be paradoxical, but rather reflect differing epistemic realities. Interestingly, we do seem to have gone some way towards eliminating contradiction. If knowledge is whatever is known, whether later revised or not, and different knowers can hold incompatible knowledge, then contradictions such as it is raining and it is not raining can both exist for different knowers, since different knowers will never be together at exactly the same time and exactly the same location. But what about a single knower at a single time? Can that person hold it is true that it is raining and it is false that it is raining? Seemingly impossible. It is not a contradiction because of the time element, which can never be eliminated. There is never the same time. Even within a single knower, two thoughts cannot be held simultaneously, as we have seen. But some facts are simply facts, right? For example, today is Sunday, but it isn't in India or Australia. All facts are within frameworks, contexts. A fact is never something wholly detached from the conditions under which it is known. In a way, we are all spouting alternative facts, these being relative in space and time, and don't realize or accept that we are. There is no such thing as the notion, it is what it is, or how things are. It should be how things are temporarily. In theory, time should not affect facts. Each of us has a different time. Temporary facts are facts in a peculiar way. Nobody has a now fact. Basically, now is too short to ever be a fact. Now is immediately the past, but we don't each have the same fact about the past either. I'll get back to that a little later. Perhaps alternative facts could also be called temporary facts. As Karl Popper put it, all our knowledge, I quote, all our knowledge is provisional, conjectural, hypothetical. It is subject to revision in the light of new evidence. Close comments. A problem with the very concept fact is that it can't be approximate. An approximate fact is not a fact. At which point within the approximation lies the fact? If you zoom out from approximate, you get to similar and eventually to alternative. Are there dividing lines? This applies to everything. Where is the line between similar and different? The heliocentric model of the solar system is a fact today, but it wasn't 200 years ago. The geocentric model was a fact then. Only in retrospect do we say that it wasn't a fact 200 years ago. Facts are temporary. So will there at some point in the future be facts, proven facts? We will never know, since we can never get to the future. It's impossible. Yes, we can predict, but it is always based on what had happened. It will never be tomorrow. It will immediately be the past, and so we will never know what is fact tomorrow. There are no facts about the past either. The past is memory, and everyone's memory is different. To claim, as does, for example, physicist and philosopher of science Tim Maudlin, that there is only one past and consequently only one future is patently wrong. It would assume that the past consists only of facts, known and unknown, with no wiggle room for doubt. Within the claim of there being only one past is the absolute certainty of facts. Maudlin gives the example of it being a fact that Aristotle had a blood type, even though we don't know what it was. That is a fair assumption, of course. After all, the modern scientific notion of human blood types wasn't discovered until 1901. The point is that while Aristotle obviously did have a blood type, nobody at the time even knew that there was such a thing as a blood type. The question now is whether at the time, 2,500 years ago, it was a fact that Aristotle had a blood type. A reasonable and reasoned answer would require placing one's mind back in time to when the question would have been posed. The question, what was Aristotle's blood type before it was measured, has no answer, not because we couldn't know until we looked, but because the question has no meaning. The point is, of course, that it could not have been posed at the time, and so whether it was a fact then is completely irrelevant. If there is truth and a fact, we could go along with Thomas Kuhn and call it paradigm relative. It depends on context. In this case, the period in history. In other words, there is no eternal truth and no eternal fact. They are based on a possible past and a possible or probable future. An example would be Newton's physics, and consider whether it is true, whether it represented facts. It is eminently reasonable to say that it was true within its context. The paradigm is paradigm according to Kuhn. But what we now see as incorrect assumptions, like absolute space and absolute time, were once accepted as fact. Along came Einstein and redefined the very meaning of motion, time, and mass. Ignoring context is an invalid way of considering what is a fact and what isn't. That which is a fact today may not have been a fact in the past. As we have seen, it all depends upon the information available. Time is a good leveler, showing up the trap of retrospective truth and the hubris of knowing facts, which one day may themselves turn out to be past facts. For flat earthers, as I told you last time I met one, their knowledge is fact for them, not an alternative fact. You can't get past that, by the way, try it. The information you now have leads to conclusions you come to about the past. Did dinosaurs exist? Was it a fact that they existed in the past when there were no humans? Facts are always in their context. There are only facts, no alternative facts, in dictatorships or in religious doctrines. It is not about what is, but what is known after being subjected to years of given information. So-called facts and statistics often go together. It seems natural to think that the more voices there are, the more validity there is for a fact. Do many facts make one actual fact? Usually, one thinks that different perspectives are partial glimpses of a single temporary facts that do not together make a single fact. The notion that we cannot see all of anything in one go is an ancient one, told already in ancient India as a parable, and became part of Jain, Buddhist, Hindu, and Sufi lore. The parable is of blind men touching different parts of an elephant, with each of them giving a description of how the elephant would look based on what they had touched. The story continues with a sighted man telling the blind men that each has a part of the truth that taken together will give the true picture of the elephant. The parable is flawed, though. The problem is that a person who can see is not much better off than each of the blind men, since he also sees or perceives the elephant only from where he is located, and so can never see the entire elephant either. The parable didn't need the men to be blind. Each person would see his piece in his own way due to each different location. This is somewhat disconcerting. After all, we do want to see the whole picture, and generally we assume that we do. There is, though, no position from which we would have an entire view of anything. As we move to bring hidden sides into view, the previously visible sides become hidden and possibly become part of a memory that itself changes in time. Nietzsche was wrong when he claimed that the more eyes, different eyes we can use to observe one thing, the more complete will our concept of this thing, our objectivity be. What he was guilty of was not understanding that there is no entire view of anything, no matter how many people are focusing on it. It's not a matter of numbers. Each pair of eyes is seeing a different part of the whole at a time. We are always observing from a perspective, and perspectives are only partial. While scientists are prone to claim that they deal with facts, this sort of hubris is not part of art and music. There are facts about or in art and music. There are no facts about or in art and music. When set out on a canvas, visual art, or as a written score, the music, they contain marks that point towards interpretations for differing knowledge. I think that is specialness of the art in general. I'm going to do unprovable facts, which because of time, I'll have to leave out. I'll do it another time. I was telling you about numbers, but we won't now due to time. So from here, I want to return to Kellyanne Conway's alternative fact, which I would like to brand as alternative knowledge coming from alternative information. As I put it earlier, knowledge is about what is known and is not connected to objective truth. Objective truth. Because of this, knowledge is relational and so is not an intrinsic property of the universe. Knowledge is tied to the observer, who, by the way, I prefer to call the knower. Knowledge does not exist independently of knowers, so that multiple interpretations of what happened or might have happened can and do coexist. Knowledge is relational. Interpretations are what has become known by individual subjective knowers who may indeed hold incompatible facts different to what other people hold. In that framework, an alternative fact would not be an oxymoron. It would not be a reflection of ontology, but of epistemology, that is, differing epistemic realities that I mentioned. Kellyanne Conway was a conduit of information that needed to be imparted. In that framework, an alternative fact is as factual as another fact. In this case, what had been seen by millions of people live and on TV. Was it not equivalent to the fact known by flat earthers? And here is a danger for memories created for the future. There is no the past, no one past. There are pasts, plural, memories of the past, where facts over time have been submerged. It's called history. In 100 years, 200 years, what will remain of a comparison between Obama's inauguration and Trump's, or any known facts? What will history books say? Isn't history largely about alternative facts? Let me conclude with a quotation from Nietzsche. There are no facts, only interpretations. So, that's it for the time being. You now can have a go at me, argue with me, even agree with me if I'm so lucky today, which I never am. But so it's up to you now. Have a go at me. I'm ready. So, Lawrence, you got in there very fast.
Yeah,
Oh,
Ron, that was excellent. Thank you.
so
And
sorry. Can I just mention, please make them as short as you can, so everybody has a turn as we go on. Thank you. Sorry, Lawrence.
absolutely, I just wanted to, say that was a great introduction, and I agreed with most of what you said there, with along with Popper and Kuhn and Nietzsche, how facts are somewhat unstable. I think what you're bringing up is the instability of a fact and how it relies on the observer's point of view. But I wanted to introduce a slight where I break from what you're saying when we talk about someone like Kellyanne Conway. So you were talking about an observer who is speaking in good faith, who actually observes something, obeys a rational process, and states what they believe is correct. I don't believe Kellyanne Conway falls into that framework. Kellyanne Conway is providing Machiavellian facts, meaning they are not based on an actual observation. They're based on what she wants to be true, and she creates propaganda. So I agree it's hard to draw lines between these things because it somewhat is about intention. But at some point, a fact which is not a fact in good faith is propaganda. Thank you.
That's interesting. I'm wondering if she actually believed what she was saying, and we don't know. propaganda is a very dodgy thing because when they keep on saying it, they believe it. And I'm I'm wondering about that. And my point at the end was that after propaganda, whatever goes on and on and on, eventually it becomes history. It becomes true. That's my worry with what she did. I agree with you, by the way. It was propaganda. On the other hand, it was information that was imparted to everybody, and people who who will not be alive when that comes out will wonder which is true and which isn't.
It's a
Thank you
statement
very
not
much.
based on information,
Sorry, based on what?
not based on information, based
Um,
on a political desire.
yeah, true. But after a few hundred years, it will be information. That's my worry. Right, and that's what we read history books and we think they're true. Very, very doubtful that all the stuff that we read is true. Very doubtful. It must have its, you know, thank you, right. Josh, I can't see you walking. Ah, you're not
You'll
walking.
see me driving.
That's
I'm
terrible.
driving to my walk.
I need you for my monthly exercise.
Okay. You won't have to wait too long, I promise. But we will
Okay,
begin our trek in a few minutes.
okay, fair enough. Off you
uh,
go. Yes.
so, so I had a comment and a question. You said you used the parable of the blind man and the elephant, but that assumes that there is an elephant. So that assumes there is the object. So our approach, our access to the object, to objectivity, you're highlighting is problematic. And to use a word like approximation indicates only makes sense when there has to be something that we're approximating. So when you focus on our efforts as human beings, you can say that they're always going to be lacking. We're never going to get there, but we will approximate, and we can approximate because there is the elephant, there is the object. Now, somebody like Nietzsche would say there isn't the object. That's sort of going in the postmodern direction. But so now, among those who seem to be saying something similar to what you're saying, you mentioned Popper and Kuhn. Both of them believe in the notion of progress, even in spite of the same limitations that you pointed out. So my question for you is, do you accept what they're accepting, which is that it makes sense to talk about a progress of the sciences? And because on the basis of that, one can then distinguish between better and worse approximations.
No. In answer to your question, no, I don't. I don't know that we can actually really believe or we can accept, and we like to think there's progress, but there are parts of history where there was no progress at all. There are parts of science that was no progress at all, and progress is in the eyes of the believer. Progress in science is in the eye of the scientist. And those who know about string theory and don't like it would not say there was any progress in in string theory. So no, I don't think there is an intrinsic progress. No, I don't. I mean, there might be many things when we look back. Only when we look back in retrospect can we say there was progress. We can't while we're doing it. And I think that scientists are bombarding us with their facts. What they say is fact as far as they're concerned. That's the impression I get. And it's never fact. Never. It's a way forward as far as they're concerned, but not as far as we're all concerned. Hey, that was a long answer to your very short question. Thank you, Josh. See you on the way back. Okay. Hi there, Richard. I can't hear you.
You're muted.
You're muted.
I've unmuted.
Good.
I think James may have been in front of me, but if he doesn't mind, I'll go now.
I can't see it.
I think that what you stated was almost certainly what almost any logical person would accept. But I've been trying to think how one could argue against it, because I enjoy arguing against you. And I thought that was the whole point of these seminars. Really trying to get our minds working.
Nobody's called me logical before. This is brilliant.
Well, no, but the thing was, with Kellyanne's statement, there was data there. And most of us would say that if you can count something, if you can take data and you can show that something is false, then that is obviously propaganda, in this case, political propaganda. However, I've been trying to think of ways you could argue from her point of view. And if you go back to ancient Athens, for instance, then you wouldn't even notice more than half the crowd, because probably half would be female, or at least maybe a quarter, and then there would be slaves, and they can't vote. In fact, you had to have a certain amount of property and be a citizen to vote. And I suspect that the people who wrote her speech for Kellyanne, because I doubt whether she brought it up herself, were thinking in that way, because they are incredibly right-wing. Even if you go back to my grandfather's time, half the people in England couldn't vote. Some people could vote multiple times because they had business addresses as well as their own as well. As you say, it's subjective. It's another example of parallax. Wherever you stand, that is what you believe. But I think she was trying to get us, and by that I mean the people they dislike on cultural grounds, the people who they put as being politically to the left, maybe, or to the politically against them. They wanted to get us confused because they are deliberately mixing something that is, if you put in inverted commas, real world data with the idea, the post-structuralist view of reality, and how you can't have something that is capital T truth, something that is capital R real, that everything is subjective. And they were deliberately trying to confuse all the intellectuals and all the, in inverted commas, woke people out there who they regard as enemies. And so they brought it up. But it is quite possible that they were saying, we discount half the people in that crowd because we don't think they're actually worthy of a vote. That is the only way I can see that you can justify what she said.
I have another way of justifying it.
I'll be interested in knowing.
That's all right with you. I really believe, don't know, that dictators believe every word they're saying. I don't think they're there fooling us. They're 100% believe it. You watch them, you see them, and not the same thing. But Trump, I believe, I'm not saying he's a dictator, by the way, okay? It's just I'm using a name who is in the news. I think he believes every word he says. He actually believes it.
Even his contradictions. Even that he'll say something one day and then the next day he'll say something.
Yes, you can see him talk. He believes one, then he believes the other. And dictators, just watch them. I don't think you could. They're giving you facts. I don't agree with. I don't think they are all trying to fool us. They are, well, they are, but I mean, they're giving us their facts. That's the point, and I think that's something.
They're giving
important.
Their subjective viewpoint. They're not giving facts in any way or shape.
Well, as far as they're concerned, it is the whole point of what I was saying. That a fact is, if that is a fact for somebody, if flat earthers have as a fact that the earth is flat, then that is their fact. That's a fact. You can't argue against them. I tried. You can't. They got a fact.
I still think it's a metaphor. A flat earther is to describes a certain type of person rather than.
Richard, have you ever met one? Have you ever talked to one?
I've met some who are audiophile flat earthers. That is, that they believe that using vinyl gives you a better sound than using digital source that you can prove, in fact, does carry more information with it.
Richard, don't muck around with my question. I asked you, did you or
No,
have you?
I've never met
That's
any.
it. Okay.
Oh, wait a moment. Sorry. Yes.
So when
yes,
you do,
have,
try and argue away from that fact of theirs.
I have met some indigenous people, both in Australia and in Fiji and in a couple of other places, who the concept of whether the earth is round or flat doesn't even come across them. But I don't want a spear in my back. I preferred to try and find out what they did believe in rather than arguing.
Okay, fair enough. It's just that I met one. I never met one before, and I don't want to meet one again. I can't argue against him. He beat me. Well, I couldn't say anything. Anyway, thank you, Richard. Thank you. Michael, good to see you again.
Hello. Well, Ron, I appreciate your comment about this elephant. I always thought that people don't need to be blind in order to have different perspectives. So I agree with this. Then I also agree with you that the facts are always always observer dependent, and we have to be very specific when we describe something as a fact. Regarding the flat Earth, we are using the flat Earth assumption when we are modeling conflicts between aircraft, because locally we can assume that the Earth is flat. So this is an assumption. It's not the same as to assume that the Earth is really flat. But in some context, we can use approximation that would look like it's contradicting to your belief, which is not necessarily the case. But I want to push back pretty strongly against this postmodernist discourse that everything is just in our language and our assumptions, and there is no reality behind this. This is not what I believe. So when you said that progress is in the eye of the beholder, just before this event, I participated in another discussion where I myself made the same comment that the progress of society is in the eye of the beholder, because much of what we consider progress can have very severe unintended consequences, so it's hard to decide what is progress and what is not. But the progress of science is not in the eye of the beholder. The progress of science is real. And I can explain what I mean under this. So the fact, and I insist on this word, the fact is that in order for any two people to have any meaningful conversation, they have to agree on something. They have to have the common language. They need to understand each other, and they need to agree on some, again, I'm using this word, facts, that you can call assumptions on something that they can accept as the basis of their discussion, because otherwise it is not possible. So you are right that what is now Sunday in California may be not necessarily Sunday, say, in Japan, maybe. But if I clarify that today is Sunday in California, and you deny this, then we live in alternative universes. So we cannot have any meaningful conversation about what are we going to do on Sunday, for instance, or what events would happen on Sunday in California. right? Regarding progress in science, the Newtonian physics is a genuine progress compared to, say, Aristotelian physics. And why I know this? Because ultimately, how we decide that something is true in physics is by first comparing our terminology, which in physics it's usually formalized, it's expressed in very strict and ambiguous ways, and then comparing our measurement or observation procedures, and then making predictions. If my prediction is that if we remove a friction, then the moving body would not decelerate, and your prediction that it would, then we can make this experiment and compare them. And Newtonian physics says that without friction, it would not decelerate. And this is a fact. And this is a scientific fact that remains even in relativity theory and in quantum mechanics.
So, Michael, you're saying that facts are eternal, and that when we get 500 years ahead, when we look back, that fact of 500 years ago is still a fact. It's eternal. And that's my point. It isn't, because you can only see whether there was progress. Only whether there was. You can only see it in the past. You can't say there is progress now, because you haven't got there yet. You've seen it move forward, but only looking back. Now you're saying that it's eternal, and I can't see that.
We don't know, of course, what will happen 500 years or even one day from now. So maybe the universe will experience this phase transition and will disappear. So all the laws of physics would change. But assuming that the universe exists roughly in the same form as it is now,
roughly,
I can insist that Newtonian physics, what it states about microscopic objects in low gravity, this is eternal. And this is a fact.
Eternal.
Yes. Eternal under these assumptions that I stated. It may not be the fact in a different universe, in an alternative universe, but in our universe,
exactly. I agree with you. Where we are now, it's a fact. Where we will be in 500 years, it will not be a fact. It won't be.
Well, this is practically a fact that 500 years from now, I will not be.
Well, there you are then.
Yeah.
I think what Michael should have said is the measurement is a fact, but the interpretation of that is something else.
Interpretation is something else, but the outcomes that we can agree based on our predictions, it's still within this scientific framework. This is a fact. Interpretations could be different. So the same measurements can be interpreted differently from quantum standpoint than from classical Newtonian standpoint. But still the measurement outcomes remain the same as long as we agreed on procedures and definitions. In our common language, we don't always, and we don't usually even, agree on definitions because of ambiguities of our common language. And a lot of disagreements happen for this reason. But in physics and in many sciences, this is not the case. Because why it is difficult to read the scientific literature is because you have to go through this strict formal language often that just defines the terms. and our brains are not very capable in doing so. It requires training and discipline. But once we agree on definitions, we have to come to the same conclusion. So
that's the point. We do not agree on definitions, and also we don't. There's scientists that have been argue like crazy about stuff. I mean, if you're a physicist, look back over the last 200 years and see how many things that were facts are not facts anymore. And if that happens, then in another couple of years, what we think of facts now and eternal, we'll say we were crazy to think they were. That's all I'm saying.
I disagree with this. A lot of facts established in 19th century, even in 18th century, still remain.
And most didn't. Michael, we will meet again here in 20 years. Do you agree?
Okay.
Fair enough.
All right.
I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Debbie.
Yes, really interesting topic, and I wanted to take to extract the points that have been shared now, and to take 3 points and to look at facts as a social and political concept rather than a metaphysical one. And so, first of all, I've got 3 points. My first point, and I try and make it short. The first point, and it's perhaps more analytical with the term alternative facts itself, that does presuppose that there's existence of facts, and that's a bit what Richard said about the object, about the elephant and agreement. There has to be something there in which it is alternative from. So we don't, for example, we don't speak about alternative unicorns, alternative square circles. We do have something that there is some sort of fact, or in a political way to put it, there is the authority of facts. So politically speaking, I would take the term alternative facts that are not really a denial of facts of what were. They are actually a claim of the state of fact. Emil, shh, sorry, Emil, shh. My second point, sorry, I'm not alone. Emil, sorry. And my second point, and that is more taking it and opening it up to the political aspect, it's that facts are not simply like objects that we find lying around in the world. Facts we get, facts are reached by a process that is accepted as one. So I see facts as actually as opinions, and therefore they can be changed through time, but they're a special kind of opinion. They are an opinion which is socially accepted, politically accepted, and they're stabilized through social processes, institutions, and methods. So there has to be a method, an accepted method, an agreed method. It can be a scientific method and all that, something that is accepted through an institution, a community, as a fact. And to take the third point that, Ron, you were talking about, also about that facts have context and they are contextual. And I agree with that. And what is the context? The context is always social, it's always political, it's always in different frameworks, like you said, Ron. Information is taken differently. It depends on the circumstances. It's presented, statistics, historical events, scientific findings. Then they don't stand within themselves. Just like you said, they're observers, and the observers are people, are institutions, are scientists, are lawyers, are doctors. So the disagreements that we have are not about the object itself. It's more about how we got to these, about the process. So from this, then it relates to actually, when we want to, maybe the question is not what is true, but it's who is the authority who determines what is true. And that's how we determine what a fact is. And that, I think, now when we see with social media, and if I relate it to perhaps now you're relating to perhaps a crisis of knowledge, how can we know? So when people are talking alternative facts, that's exactly what happens. We have distrust in the institutions who deliver these facts. And I think that is what the crisis now, what perhaps we should talk about, is who should we trust? Which authority, which scientific authority it gives us the facts can determine as facts, and alternative ones are the ones who are perhaps not completely not true, but are not accepted by that authority, which we should or not trust. And that's what makes it a fact or not. That's my contribution. Thanks. And sorry.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Thank you. Very interesting. And another glimpse at facts. Thank you, Debbie. Kerry.
All right. So, Ron, I think that, when we say facts, what we're trying to do, it's our attempt to characterize or represent or somehow define interactions and relationships, right? The problem is, as you alluded to, is where do we draw the boundaries? How do we do this? How do we come up with some kind of universal ruler? And I don't think we can ultimately, right? In the sense that there's capital F facts like capital T truth or capital O objective reality or something like that. It's hypothetical. So, what we end up with is we've got, these intersubjective representations or characterizations, which are, I guess, cultural facts. And then we've got what we experience individually or subjectively, which would be perceptual facts. Except these are more, what's the word we use in epistemology? The truth claims, right? Because even our own perceptions, these things are, assemblies that our mental apparatus performs so we can function. We're not in touch with any of this stuff. And just as an illustration of how radical the filtering our brains do, take psychedelics, which alters this construction, and see how radically different your perception of the world is. Now, you might not be very functional at that particular way, but it's still, that doesn't necessarily mean that what we're seeing, is necessarily purer. It's just more pragmatically functional. Hell, it might be less accurate, right? Because it's filtering out so much stuff. So we can actually process it in a particular way. But anyway, that's about all I've got to say about that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to point out, I was not advocating that there are no facts. I was trying to delve into what it could possibly mean for somebody to have a fact as far as they're concerned. I'm not saying they're right or wrong. And I was not doing a woke thing. Really, that's not me. I was just trying to yes, but the whole thing, just to look at something and laugh at it and say, but hang on a second, what is there behind it? And that if we do that a bit more, just a bit more, we might get on better. It just a bit more. I'm not saying we need to believe everything, but it was just something I just because of what she said, which was ridiculous. But on the other hand, I think that eventually she must probably believed it. I really do think so. But anyway, I just put that in.
But Ron, should we believe anything in an absolute sense, or is it all a little bit shaky with fuzzy edges?
Yes. Oh, can, can you? Who was that? I can't see. Who just
Oh,
spoke
that
to
was
me?
me. I was just, yeah.
I can't see on the thing.
Oh, my hand dropped because of Zoom
Oh,
is,
okay.
Carrie.
Now,
yeah.
sorry, what was the question again?
Oh, I was just saying, should we believe any claim absolutely, or do they all rest on shifting sand with fuzzy edges? I mean, it seems like they're all contextual to
No,
some
I
degree.
agree. I agree.
Okay.
We need to be careful. We always need to do the yes, but bit. Yes, okay, thank you for telling me that, but just let me think about it. And
Okay.
art is pretty good. Music's pretty good because it's interpretation, and that's pretty good. Science is not interpret. They don't say it's interpret. They want to give us facts, and it's annoying as far as I'm concerned. But
Ron, I think that's questionable. You're talking about scientism, which has become for a lot of criticism these days. Most scientists are, I believe, more evolved than what you're saying.
yeah, I've heard a lot of scientists. But anyway, you're right. You're right. You're right. Andre, are you? Do I pronounce it Andre like in French? I can't hear you.
However you
Ah,
wish, sir. However you
how
wish. You can say Andre, Andre, in Spanish, Andre, doesn't matter.
how do you pronounce it? Just so that I get it right.
Well, I wish I could say by the way you're saying it, but here in the States,
Oh,
it's kind of
fair
hard, so
enough.
people just usually go
No,
with it.
in that case, Andre, go for it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think one thing that I realized is there's different levels of facts, meaning there are some facts that are, subjective to ourselves and what we think or what we experience. And then there's some facts that are immutable, that are indisputable, that are there, whether we are aware of it or not. They are there.
Ah,
Um, yeah, bear with me. I'm going to pack a lot of stuff, and I recommend people write some stuff down because I'm going to uncover a few things. Um, there's something I'm starting to realize a lot, and it's the fact that the notion of knowledge does not always mean truth. There was a point in which science once said that the Earth, everything revolved around the Earth, and we later came to find out that that wasn't the case. And then there are objective examples of truth, biology, mathematics, etc. I think I know truth is always there, whether we are conscious of it or not. And that's something that we are having to come to terms with. And I've had my own battle with it at firsthand. I had an altercation with my employer, the company that I worked for, because I refused to give in to the desire of the client for regarding them as the other gender that they're not. And I knew there was a price for that. I knew that I was having to face consequences in order to stand up for the facts, or in this case, the truth. And needless to say, I was wished well on my future endeavors, and so I had to look for another job after that. But I was willing to pay the price for the sake of the truth, and that's something I'll always fight for till my last breath, no matter what. And that is something people are starting to realize. There's things that are hard to accept. The truth, they say the truth hurts. The truth hurts only if one is not able or willing to accept it. And the reason it can be very hard is because you run the risk of having to rewire your reconceived notions, right? You risk having to alter aspects of your identity, right? We know things generally work in a certain way that helps life flourish. Like, I love that somebody mentioned the political aspect of stuff, but I think a lot of times we're distorting facts in a way that best fits. It's only a matter of time before it officially like snaps back, and there are consequences. Um, so yeah, there's distinctions between subjective truths and then objective truths. Subjective is things that we experience. It's our personal experience, right? Like how we feel, how we experience something firsthand. And then there's the objective side of things where it's just it is what it is, based on the three affirmations that confirm it to be as such, which is empirical evidence, consensus, and peer review, logistical consistency, and sourcing. We know what healthy is. It means not being obese. It means not being overweight. It means eating well. That you notice there's a correlation of longevity of lifespan when you're not overweight. That's how you're able to know that is not healthy or healthy. Um, so yeah.
Thank you very much. A pity you weren't here 2 sessions ago because we were talking about realism, which is your point of view,
Um.
which is a shame. And I am an anti-realist. I just need to tell you straight out. Okay.
Okay.
So very, very, I mean, I'm not going to go into it now, but I do not see how there can be knowledge of something when there's nobody there to know about it. I cannot understand what objective truth could possibly be if there's nobody around. I mean, how would we know that there is truth if you're not there? But that's realism, and I'm not.
Sure. Think of the planet, for example. There was discoveries that weren't there. Like we humans didn't always know we were in a revolving sphere
Well,
until,
in that case,
you know what I mean?
no, yes, but in that case, that wasn't a fact. It just wasn't. It was a fact when we knew about it. But by the way, if you look out, you'll see the sun going, and that's how people see it, and that's how flat
Hmm.
earthers see it. And there it is. The sun's moving. That was a fact. So so first of all, I admire and I admire your stand. I really do. I think that people who put themselves out for their beliefs, if they're decent beliefs, I think that's very, very commendable, really. But it's a huge topic, and I know we're going to come back to it again and again.
Yeah.
It's a big argument, and
Yeah. Because I
and
think you are right. I just think there's two of them. There's the ones that are factually true, and then there are ones that are just based on how we feel. And there's the two facts right there, two different levels. It's Hitler was bad, but it's also, well, it's more complicated than that. Like there were desperate people. There was like a lot of stuff, hyperinflation. These guys were like, it was a lot. It was more complex. Like just going based off the axis were evil, which is in our textbooks. That was my conceived notion of it. And it's much more complicated than that is what I mean,
it
when it
definitely
comes to
is.
that fact.
But
Yeah.
anyway, you you stick with us, and we're going to get back to realism in some way. We always do. We always do. Thank
I
you
look
very
forward
much,
to it.
Andre. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tone, hello there.
Yeah, so this is a great conversation. So one thing I think that challenges this idea of facts is when you get to the social realm, when you get to institutions that humans create, you have this issue of how do we create, for example, currency? How do we create laws? How do we create the idea of private property? These things are not aspects of physics. These things only exist because of collective agreement. And I posted a paper earlier from John Searle on social ontology. So this will be an example from that. So you could imagine that there's a wall that's a physical barrier, and it serves that function by virtue of literally being embedded in the world as just a wall. But if you break that wall down, we could just put a line of stones on the ground and have a collective agreement that says this line of stones now has the status function of being a barrier. And he would say this like, so this line of stones X counts as barrier, that would be the function Y, in context C, our collective agreement, maybe it's a government, local, state, whatever. But in this way, now you have a weird question, which is it a fact that that line of stones is a barrier. In terms of physics, it is not a fact that that line of stones is a barrier. But in terms of our institutions, we have a collective agreement that that is a fact. In other words, it's checkable whether I am violating that barrier or not, right? We
Abstract
could
fact.
film that. And so that is a kind of institutional fact. And there are many such examples. And in some sense, we would not be able to have a human society without these sorts of operations, these status functions. And so what I think about is we just need to really distinguish between the types of facts that are objective outside of human opinion. So, for example, the crowd size. The crowd size could be counted because we have cameras and we can count all the individuals at the event. That would not be subject to opinion. But this is interesting. But the fact that there is a president is a different kind of fact because there's nothing in physics that means that you have to have presidents. In fact, in many places of the world, they do not have presidents. So that's a collective agreement. That's a different form. There would be we accept S, whoever the person is we anoint as president, has powers. S does A. He can command the military. He must give a State of the Union address. Things like this. So that's a different kind of fact. But we have to incorporate this when we talk about facts. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Yeah, that's interesting because if you remember, the last meeting was about trust, which is basically what you're talking about, right? If you draw a line across the road and you have to trust people, they're not going to go over it, right?
Absolutely.
So yes, very good. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you. Dalia, hi there. Dalia?
Sorry, it took me a while to find the button.
Okay.
Actually, I have more of a question to you rather than having a comment. Maybe I'll have a comment after I hear your answer to my question. So you mentioned Nietzsche, and I'm a very big Nietzschean, and you have said that you believe that what he said is not correct. You believe that he said that the more eyes we have, the more we can form a concept.
Yeah.
And but can you please elaborate on this? Because I understood that you think he thinks that when we have more eyes, we get a full picture of something. But this is not my interpretation. I would like to hear your opinion again about that, if you please.
Well, statistics doesn't work. You can have you have a country that has an enormous majority for a very, very, very right-wing government. Huge majority. Huge. 90% of people have voted for it. So does that make it right, or does it do anything at all just because you've got a lot of people? Or if most people in the world believe in God, for example, or billions of them, does that make it right because there are lots and lots and lots of people? I can't.
Of course not. Of course not. And I truly agree with you on this, but I don't think this is what Nietzsche said or was trying to say. Nietzsche is a perspectivist, right? He created that concept or adopted that concept that truth or I'm not going to say fact, a truth is how we see it, how we interpret it, right? As you said, truth, there's no facts, only interpretations. So he did believe in that. He never said, and he was totally against herd mentalities. He never said that a general consensus makes something a fact or a truth or a conviction. It's just what we have been conditioned to believe. So there, also there are so many synonyms to this word, not even synonyms, they are words that can be mixed up with the word fact. So there are convictions, beliefs, truth, perspectives, general consensus. All these don't make a thing a fact. And what I believe Nietzsche was trying to say here is that the more eyes we see something with, the more we can form our concept, our belief, our perspective. This doesn't make it truth, it makes it our truth. our own truth, like an individual truth. And what I think he meant by eyes, because he always used metaphors, I think he meant like the philosophical eye, the scientific eye, the artistic eye, all these different kinds of eyes, not people, not eyes of people, not literal eyes. He's meaning like different perspectives. That's what I understood from that particular code that you mentioned. And also, Nietzsche specifically was totally against any facts, if I may say. Even mathematics, he said, like, we say 2 plus 2 is 4, right? But for mathematics, he said that we invented mathematics so we can interpret the world around us. It doesn't mean that math is correct. He actually said it's a very nice concept to have. He would like to apply the scientific method to every kind of understanding of the world around us or the reality. But he even said that for math, for example, when we say a tree plus a tree makes them 2 trees, he said this is incorrect. He said because this tree is, for example, a maple tree, and this tree is an evergreen tree, you cannot add them up if we're going by the mathematical rules that we have put. So even these, like math itself for him, is not a fact. In my opinion, facts are the only fact in life is death. And even that can be argumentative because, I mean, people believe in ghosts. So death might not be the end of life. Yeah, the body stops moving, but then something else can be going on. So the word fact, I think there is no facts whatsoever. It's only a perspective, only a way we see things, we interpret things. And in that case, alternative facts can happen because these are the perspectives.
I agree.
Because there is no facts to begin with, if we agree on that. That's my premise.
I think we agree on some of it and not of others because exactly for the reason that I said that there are two of us and we agree, but we don't actually agree because it's impossible to know that we 100% agree. So we approximately agree. And if there are 100 of us, 100 people will be looking at different perspectives and say they agree. But in actual fact, they don't 100% agree because there is no 100% truth with a capital T. There are truths with an S,
Exactly.
which is fair. So that it doesn't matter how many people you have, they will all be individuals and will all agree, but in fact not agree. And we can't even tell whether they agree. They can't even tell whether they agree with somebody else. It's the small differences that make truths. But if you move out from that and look at it from above, then in that case you'll say all these people believe in the same thing, but that is not, sorry about the word, true, because they don't. So the further you go in, the further you see that people do not believe the same thing. So I think we're agreeing. The only thing I do want to say is about death. Pity Morris is not here. You said that the only thing we can agree on is death, and I say, and that's the only thing we cannot agree on because nobody knows themselves when it happens. Only the people outside will know that it's happened, but we are all immortal because we will not know when it's happened. We will not know. Therefore, we're immortal. And I hope you all feel better after I told you that. You can go away singing and dancing. We're immortal, folks. We're immortal. So when I say that Michael and I are going to meet in 20 years, I have no doubt about it. And neither does Michael. Right, Michael?
May I add just one little thing? Because
Yes.
I read somebody saying that
Please do.
Nietzsche is a Nazi. I would just kindly ask him to read Nietzsche not read about Nietzsche, read him, because he was not a Nazi, was not a proto-Nazi.
That's true.
If he had some views that were interpreted differently, and here we go about facts, right?
Definitely.
So they were interpreted in a different way and adopted in a bad way. That is not
Definitely.
his problem. He even cut ties with his sister because she was a Nazi.
Yes, yes, definitely. You're right. So
Thank you, sir.
It's a very good point you made. It's a very, very important point about Nietzsche. Very important.
Yes.
Thank you very
absolutely.
much,
Thank you,
Delia.
sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Bill, William.
Thank you. I'm listening to this and I'm saying, I have had a profession of lawyering in litigation for 50 years, and I have an obsession as a defense lawyer with alternative facts. Let me explain. I have Debbie's thought that it's a process that arrives at a theory of truth. And Delia is correct. I think she has the same view. But here is my point. I think that we have facts and we have narratives, and narratives are about coherence of fact. In other words, there are dots that we have to connect into a theory of coherence. And what we argue about are theories of coherence. And that's, I thought, what Popper was talking about when he talked about falsification, because he too is obsessed with alternative facts that disprove a theory or story, it will. So I just want to go back to the law. I have alternative facts because I'm a cross-examiner. I know how to take a witness into a issue of giving me admissions that become alternative facts for my theory in the case. And my theory in the case is that the plaintiff is wrong. And the wrong means this narrative is wrong. The coherence is wrong because there are facts that disprove it. And that's what alternative facts really are. And we have a process that esteems the process of getting alternative facts before a jury to make a decision. And that's the important fact of life in litigation. And similarly, I think that that's the idea in journalism. There are people who write stuff that's real and stuff that's junk. And junk is phony facts. Kellyanne Conway is a liar. That's the point. And that she's lying about the facts because she needs to. And it's not a matter of propaganda. It's bullshit is what it is. And that's why Trump is a crazy mother that he is, because he believes in alternative facts in everything. And so we have to have a process that brings back truth in a process sense, that we believe and get in front of all the evaluators of fact and theory, that they have all the evidence they need to make a judgment. And that's what juries do. And that's what I, as a lawyer, tried to do in my cases. I want to disprove the plaintiff's case by saying, look, the witness couldn't see what they said they saw. They can't really prove that because they weren't there. Those kind of questions are a key to disproof. And that's what I thought Popper was saying. Because alternative facts are facts that are disproving facts, and they're important for falsification, for truth arriving at a process. And that's why I think it's important for us to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William. Thank you very much. Yeah, interesting. It's a lot. Lawyers do have problems when it comes to what is fact and what isn't. Because anyway, it's a very difficult point. Lucky I'm not a lawyer. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you, Roland.
Yeah, hi. I'm lucky I'm not one anymore as well. Facts. Well, I made a few notes here. Quite difficult to formulate a thread, but I'll have a go. I suppose I start from the principle that you've outlined, or that facts happen within people, and so I suppose I could say that a fact is a psychological state. What happens when we formulate a fact? I don't want to go into the details of that because I think that could be a topic on its own. But I think one of the sort of starting point I have here is a fact is a type of experience that people have. So the next question I would have there is why do we have these things called facts? What are they for? And the particular example you're talking about reveals or you started talking about, the alternative facts, reveals a fundamental reason why we have facts, which is to create influence. The purpose of that observation or the comment was to create an influence. And we formulate facts in order that we can create influence. I think I'd be right in saying that what Michael was referring to in developing scientific theories, that their predictive power, as that predictive power increases, it implies that our ability to create influence in a more accurate way increases as well. So when we start kind of worrying about facts and whether facts are true or false, behind that is something about influence and what the effect of having facts, knowing facts, actually is. So we're talking about two different things here. One is actually experiencing a fact. What happens then? How does that work? But the second thing is actually asserting facts. And what is the desired influence there? I suppose we could say that when you assert a fact, it's no different from any other form of information. Like if I go out into a field and see a tree, I am seeing a tree and I can say, oh, there's a tree in the field. If someone comes to me and says, there is a tree in the field, and that's a fact, that's just another form of information. And the level of confidence I attach to that will regulate what influence that information has, just as much as my seeing the tree. I could say that one is better than the other. Nowadays, seeing is not really believing either, is it? Because we can the technological capabilities are such that we can see information, we can see videos, we can see pictures that have been created with such a degree of realism that they are highly persuasive, just as much as someone coming and talking to us might be persuasive about what they believe facts to be. So I feel that behind this is this idea of influence. And this is a key factor in why the question of facts and deception and so forth is such a hot topic, because obviously we want to act in such a way that it comes to our benefit in some form, not in a way that we are deceived. Of course, nature is full of these examples where animals or plants try to deceive other animals and plants by presenting themselves in a way that are interpreted by those victims, we could say, as safe when they're not safe. So, to my mind, it's the psychological function of fact that's most interesting. What have we got them for? How do facts affect the influences that we can make in the world? As regards joint facts which are shared by groups, I think we're into the same thing. How do I know whether a fact or something I see is shared by someone else? How do I know that there is agreement? Well, it's just another fact, isn't it? It's just another perception that there is consonance between me and someone else. I talk to someone, I say, this is a fact. They go, yes, I agree with you. So apparently they agree. But do they? I don't know. But that fact of agreement happens in me as well. Agreement doesn't happen in midair in some etheric way. It happens in people. Same thing. So, yeah, I think without sort of going into the kind of what is behind facts, what they are, how they occur, what they're based on, and all that, which is, I think, a much broader topic. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Roland. Yes, very interesting. Thank you. Thank you. James, hi there.
Hello, everyone. This is a great topic because it's not very dense, which I really like. It's about truth. It's about understanding, and it's the first time that I agreed with most of what you said, Ron. Maybe it might be the first time. And then I just heard, I guess, Roland, who I often disagree with, but because he comes from a psychological perspective, psychologist oriented perspective, But on the other hand, everything he said today makes sense. And it does have to do with the experience of the person who's confronting alternate facts. And the word alternate just means choice. You have a choice if something is alternative, right? So it's a question of solving a problem for yourself between conflicting or different observations or facts. So, and they don't have to be like one observation one moment, another observation the next moment, or something like that, or necessarily any specific kind of disagreement. But every fact is a statement. And that means that somebody actually had to put it out into the world as a declaration that is either true or false. And we do both. We both human beings are guilty both of, basically looking for truth, things that we consider true. And there are human beings that use deception and basically who will get disproven because of the range of their their system of deduction is not followable or prove false or something like that. Heidegger discussed this in the basic problems of phenomenology, which was a lecture series from 1923. And basically the preparation for this comes after he's discussed some of the scholastic principles about knowledge and phenomenology. But then he gets into the logic treatises of the 19th century, of ancient logic treatises, as well as the 19th century and early 20th century. This was 1923, so he didn't have Carnap and things like that, for example. Later, he became a peer of Carnap, as we know. So this is a kind of a something that he treated fairly. I think it was fairly easy from that perspective. In other words, what do you do when you form a fact? And the idea is you say something is something. You form a copula, which is putting two things into relation with each other. So that all facts have a relationship, show relationships, and all facts show basically a kind of a basis for conjunction and announce a basis for conjunction. And then afterwards, you can believe that, you can assimilate that as a fact, or you're always free to assimilate any kind of declaration as a fact, or you can study it for yourself to determine if it is true or false, or whether you can just simply whether you consider it a fact, like the average human being does. Like in other words, oh my gosh, the apple fell from the tree. Is that really true, or is it really relevant to me? Because I don't know what an apple is, or whatever. So it's kind of like it's basically a matter of interest, a matter of importance, a matter of scientific veracity, a matter of and also perhaps repeatability. Somebody messaged me, is it raining or not? If somebody says it's raining, I think it says, is it raining or not? If a Nazi says it's raining, great, stupid. Anyway, it's the so this is true, and one of the interesting things about philosophy is it holds true, I think, for everyone. Philosophy just something it's definitely something usable by everyone. So a fact is something that is uttered, and it's uttered. The importance of it is that copula. In other words, it says something about something that's in a relationship. So that's basically the criteria for fact. Facts can absolutely be wrong, just as what you consider the truth in 2026 could possibly be disproven in 2030 or something like that. I'll give you an example from the 2016 election. There was this fact, right, that was uttered by the film star. Trump can never be elected, right? So it didn't happen twice. Yeah, that's all. Just a completely. Nietzsche was right. Somebody posted a quote from Nietzsche. It's absolutely, you have to have the perspectives. You have to understand that perspectivism and phenomenology requires uh, as much as possible the ability to consider multiple perspectives. I think that's what Kellyanne Conway was talking about when she became suddenly very unpopular for for introducing the term alternative facts. But facts are like that because I can hold facts that are completely different from you, and maybe you won't be able to use the epithet. He's the epithet that it's propaganda, or another epithet that that I'm. Uh, oh, Josh says I'm wrong. Great. Okay. Well, that's all right. We disagree about a lot of things. Um, so, and then the uh, the and the basically what we need to uh, basically what we need to rely on uh, for our own circumnavigation of the world. So what we do, in other words, what we do psychologically, what we do in an everyday way is to navigate facts. And that's going to continue regardless of whether you want to freeze facts according to what a political party is saying right now, or freeze the facts according to what the history books say in 2026, anything like that. That's always going to be something that has to be the world has to always be considered in its malleability. You can't consider it closed, and that's what I liked about what you had to say, Ron. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you. Very interesting. Okay. So, Andy, you are very patient. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Great discussion. I listened carefully. I thought I would try to add something here and there with a few examples. Yeah, I looked up and there are different types of facts, and they kind of categorize into 7 general areas: empirical facts, historical facts, mathematical facts, logical facts, syllogistic reasoning, institutional or social facts, scientific, and then there's even the thing called negative facts, where you just agree with the denial of something. I'll just touch upon scientific facts because that's kind of my background, but also a little bit of the social with some examples, because I remember, I'm glad, Ron, you put together, or yeah, I should say you mentioned Kellyanne Conway and what happened there. But I also read the book, The Art of the Deal. So let's just understand exactly where all of her comments were coming from. But first, before I get into that, I will mention, I couldn't help but think about Aristotle, who 2,500 years ago talked about sophistry, and how he was trying to find it or pick it out or train people to understand when it was happening to them. Another famous saying happened, I think it was Benjamin Disraeli, since we're coming from London. One is called lies, damn lies, and statistics. So these are other forms. I was just thinking of all the forms of alternative facts and what people use to deceive. Sure, we understand truth is relative often and can get very philosophical about it, but I think when I heard the term alternative facts, the first thing that came to mind, however you interpret it, is deception. It was done purposefully, intentionally, to get an outcome so that they can weigh that outcome and then spread it. So an important thing that came up in all of that was what's called cognitive biases. And I'm sure we've all heard of when you repeat a falsehood, an alternative fact, sophistical argument, whatever it might be, a lot of people will then take it as truth. And I think that's what happened here. The crowd size was basically trying to do that, to spread these lies, even though our eyes were not deceiving us. Another one that comes up was January 6th, where one person said we were there to visit. I should say most people that are there just to visit and be part of a group. And we all knew the truth. The truth was to try to overturn an election. So getting back to this notion of repetition. So Donald Trump is famous for saying truthful hyperbole. So when something is said enough and you keep going forth, it becomes a truth. So for instance, it happened during the vaccines, right? Remember they were saying vaccines cause autism, even though the scientific facts say otherwise. Another one was, an example is AI. So one that's we hear a lot of now is AI will cause job losses. So after a while, if you hear it enough or a recession is coming, you start believing it as fact. So this becomes another way where we can deceive ourselves. So just a couple of points there that I wanted to bring out that with Kellyanne Conway in particular, not to get too political about it, but so I'll stop there.
Ron,
You're on mute.
John. Yes, I know. I had a coughing fit. John, thank you. You were patient too. Oh, you can hear me, right?
Yes, I can. So first of all, this is obviously there's been so much said, so it's for me it's difficult to add something radically new. But it's been a fascinating dialogue. I have two questions, and I'm just curious as to your thoughts. Um, and I'm not a religious person, but if there is a God, as many believe, then could things have existed at the beginning, and therefore could there be facts that stem from that we may not understand, but could there be these truly universal facts that do exist? And to go along with that, is a shared faith fact? Those are really my questions. I don't have answers. But I'm curious as to your thoughts as it relates to this larger conversation.
John, once you start with if there's a God, there's no answer because then anything is true because it's God.
Yes.
It's a problem. If there was no God at the time, then it's a different question. And I personally would say, no, there were no facts. There were no people to have facts. But once you put in God, then yeah, there were facts for God, and he told other people about those facts. But that's only if you believe. So once you put God in, it's problematic. Not for believers, but for non-believers.
Right.
And
okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mentioned God at one point. Well, not God, about religion. Religion does not have alternative facts. Particular reasons. They just got facts, right? Basically, you're not really allowed to have alternative facts. Not really. So
I would agree.
that's the
I
only
would
reason.
agree.
The only reason I put that in. So thank you very much, John. Thank you, Andre. You're back. Good. Andre, can you hear me? Your hand is up. Can't hear you.
It's on mute.
Yeah, you need to unmute.
Ask to unmute.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it was my headset, I believe. Uh, so Tone, I wanted to address Tone's mention of other truths pertaining to nationality, names, borders, things like that, the monetary system. I think it's good to that type of fact. I think that is something considered abstract. So those are abstract truths. Those are within the realm of human conception for the sake of society or civilization to work and be in order and not be in chaos or disarray. Those types of truths are subject to change, right? The Ottoman Empire is no longer here. It's now Turkey. What we have now as a president might be later a prime minister or whatever. It could be a different term, right? Democracies can become dictatorial. So names can change. Sally is now, Samantha. Like these things are subject to change. So that's the distinction of truth versus abstract truth. And the dangers are when you try to overlap abstract truth with objective truth. And I've been meaning to ask Ron, and I think this is a very important question. When it pertains to facts, or truth for that matter, is everything subject to change? Because, I from my understanding, women always have been and always will be the vessel for new humans to be born out of. That will never change.
Was that last one a question?
So is every truth subject to change is the question. Is every truth subject to change?
If there's time,
the whole thing.
If there's time, there has to be change. Otherwise, I don't say time has to have change. Otherwise, there's no time. Unless you... Yes, the answer, in my opinion, is yes. Everything has to change. Always. Because of time.
So you believe that there might be a possibility in which a woman can no longer give birth and it'll be another alternative?
Yeah. I think they're working on it.
That's all right. That's where we differ, because I think that's, yeah.
I know things
I
seem...
think you just can't leave the realm of objective reality.
I know. That's why I don't think there is objective reality. But
this is why I think there's a war on truth, and I think it's important we are aware of that, because there are civilizational consequences to this. It allows for trust to be lost in a society. Propaganda replaces reality. Institutions lose credibility.
But it's happening all the time anyway.
And language detaches from meaning, right? When you change terms and things lose their definition, we are in for it. We are in for it.
Language always changes, has always changed. Always.
Meaning behind the definition, yes. We used to speak Latin. We don't speak Latin anymore. That's not what I mean. That's not what I mean at all. So the definitions of the words that are there, right?
Like gay?
No, I'm not talking in the literal sense of the language of English, which has not always been there, obviously. But the definitions of the meanings. Does that make sense? Can you make the distinction there? They're very different things. Not the literal word for how it's spelled or how it's illustrated, but the actual definition.
But definitions are changing.
There was a word
time.
for woman in every language. There was a word for man in every language. There was a word for food or fire in every language.
I'm not sure you're right about that. There are different words for woman in French and in German, I think. No. Languages.
No, but they all point to the same definition. No, but they all
I
point to the
understand
same
what
meaning.
you're saying, but
yeah. Okay, I'm open to hear what everybody else thinks, but yeah, that's just my 2 cents there. There's dangers of losing sight of reality. But yeah, that's all me. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I understand what you're saying, but there's definitely change in language, and change of definitions. The word gay has changed tremendously. You read books from my youth, and people were gay, meaning they were happy. They were just, we're having a gay time. This is great. You can't use gay like that
Language
today.
changes, but definitions don't always change. The language changes, but not all the definitions. Some definitions are ever present, omnipresent, have always been there through the beginning. Always.
What's the definition of gay?
The definition of gay, happy.
Yeah,
it can be,
that's
but
it.
Again, that's one definition that can be changed. But like, again, that's why I'm not saying all definitions. There are some definitions that did not exist, some words that don't even still exist today. There's no word for awkward in Spanish, believe it or not. I wish there was. But
Iran?
The fundamental definitions of aspects of our society of what is a man, what is a sun, what is food, what is fire, those things that are ever present in every civilization across space and time, those words have always been there and will always be there long after we're dead. 1,000 years from now, it'll still, there might be another language, but there will be a meaning for what it is to have fire, the meaning of woman, the meaning of man,
know that.
all that stuff.
No, but no, you're basically saying that every language has every word that you can think of. Every language has it. Every language all over the world.
No, there's new words and old words that will and die.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's a revolving door of words that can go. That's for sure. You're right about that. There's not every single word has already been accounted for. Not at all. There's still words that are yet to be born. There's still words that fell out of the dictionary, right? I want to make sure. Yeah, I want to be clear on that. There's words that come and go, but there are also those words that encompass the essentials of what that are necessary for our civilization to flourish. Those definitions, the primary definitions, the essential ones, those are always there. They've always been there. Look at our art, look at our civilization, culture, look at all the past ancient civilizations. Oh, it was always there. Wi-Fi wasn't there, right? But you know what I mean?
Yeah, Ron, this is Andy. I think I can address Andre's things here because I'm a biologist. So can I just have the floor for 1 minute?
Yes, please, yes.
Okay, one of the things I was going to mention is that with the sciences, as we move along in the induction, deduction, abduction process, is we're going from math to physics to chemistry to biology. And biology, as most people know, only has theories, doesn't have laws of motion. And what's happening now, as we become more and more powerful in our ability to manipulate cells, and gender issues are arising, and cultural versus genetic issues are arising, it's complexifying this notion of absolutism, like man and woman. Because as they delve into these more complex biological processes, we're beginning to see that there's grayness on occasion. So more often than not, it's absolute. Sometimes you can get like blending of, believe it or not, sex chromosomes. So I won't go into all of that stuff. I'm just saying, as this information, technology information gets out there, it complexifies the language because a certain small group will take advantage of that. One quick example: evolution is a theory by Darwin and so on, and it best explained it. And then you have people that took it forward. Biblical scholars now believe in evolution. They didn't in the past, except for the literalists, the ones who literally believe in God talking to humans. But all of the others do. So the thought process has changed dramatically. But as it gets more sophisticated, you go up what they call the chain of sciences: biology, ecology, sociology. It gets more complex. And that's where I think this notion of language, I know exactly what Andre's talking about, and agree with most of what he's saying, but that's where I think the confusion and the sophists and the propagandists even. One final thought, and then I'll hang up in terms of that. During the election or the pandemic, vaccines all of a sudden became controversial. They never were. Since Jenner identified them in England 200 years ago, they were not controversial until some sophist threw out a paper out of hundreds that said, I think autism is caused by vaccines. One person out of hundreds of scientific articles finding no correlation. So that's the danger that I think Andre and others are getting at, where it just takes n equals 1, as they say in science, where you come to a conclusion that's wrong. It's based on misinformation or lack of reproducibility, and they run with it because they have ill intentions. And that's what we saw a lot of in the last couple of years, a lot of it, unfortunately.
That's a good point, Andy. Thank you very much. Thank you. Josh.
Here I am.
At last.
There we go. Yeah. Feeling, Ron.
I feel much better. I'm getting my monthly exercise now.
I brought plenty of ice water for us. Okay.
Great. Wonderful.
All right. Okay. I wanted to throw in the dreaded postmodern perspective, which most of the participants here would be probably tremendously hostile to, as already evident. But according to authors such as Foucault, only Foucault, you also see it in the later Wittgenstein, a fact means what it means on the basis of criteria of intelligibility. Before we determine whether a fact is right or wrong, we have to understand what it means. And to understand what anything means, you understand it within a system of relations that unfold the world in a certain way for us. It's kind of like in those optical illusions, you either see a drawing of the bunny or see a drawing of the rabbit. You can't see both at the same time because you're organizing what you're seeing in different ways. And in a way, a fact is a little element within a system in which all the elements reinforce each other. Now, within a system, it's once we're in a system of thinking, we know it, and we're both, and all of us are a part of a community that all is understanding, is working within that system of thinking. We know what it means to say that something is correct or incorrect. But if you then, to use kind of a Kuhnian, Thomas' way of thinking about it, if you shift to another paradigm, it's like turning that situation on its head. It's almost like changing the subject. And to some extent, it's almost as if you're starting over again. So the criteria of correctness or incorrectness, of factuality or lack of factuality change. It's not just a question of saying that the previous paradigm, the previous thinking was wrong, as if it was wrong to see the drawing as a rabbit versus a bunny. They're both, it's irrelevant. Using the term true or false, fact or non-fact is irrelevant when you're moving from one to the other. It's only within a particular system of understanding that it makes sense to talk about anything as being corrected or incorrect, because it gets its meaning from the criteria, from the rules. But those rules change, and they don't change according to their approximating something outside of them. It's not as if the whole time we're trying to orient our desperate attempts to understand the world by corresponding our models to the world as it is. Because the world as it is doing the same thing that we are. It's not just us as subjects, filling out models. The world relates every element within it to every other element by changing with respect to itself. So the world is sort of, is transforming itself all the time, and we're the symptom of that. So it's not just us over here as the subject and the world over there as the object, which we do an abysmal job of trying to get right. It's that the world, the sense of the world changes with respect to itself. It's that key word, the sense. When people are focusing exclusively on the truth of a fact, the notion of truth and falsity doesn't get to that notion of sense. Sense gets to this idea of when you use a word, what are you doing with it? So getting back to Andre's assertions, we can all agree on the same definitions, but the definitions aren't what we use. We use words, and when we use them, even if we agree on the same definition, we may use them differently. So the reality of the word is in how we're using them, and that use always is shifting contextually. Right now, as I'm using these words, each of you can lay out a definition of what each word I'm using means, and there might be some general consensus. But the question is, how are you using those words when you understand me? And we only find out the differences in how each of us use those words when we get into disputes. We say, how can you say that? Didn't you hear me use that word? You agreed on the definition, so why are you going off in this direction? Because we don't look for a system of understanding behind how we use a word. What are we relating it to? What's the opposite of it for each of us? The word truth can have and truth versus falsity, but it can also have other oppositions which are unique to individuals. So in spite of that, we can get along with each other to an extent. But we're in a world that we're a part of, which is continuously changing with respect to its own basis, so that there's no, you can't even defer to somebody like Karl Popper, who says, yes, you can only falsify, scientific theories, but you can never exhaustively prove them. But Popper is still holding on to this notion that there is some ground for our methods. We can rely on the methods and agree with each other about the methods, even if we disagree about the conclusions of a particular scientific theory. But if we then ask the question, why should the methods be assumed to be protected from contextual and social change? If we then include the methods themselves and say, well, they're somewhat relative too to where we're at, then you have to stick with, you have to have more of a modesty concerning what our aims are in moving forward in the world and being able to make sense of each other. That we have to appreciate that we're always, when we wake up in the morning, the context change, and then we have to some extent be creative in dealing with each other, rather than assuming that we can rely on some sort of a fixed world out there that we may be only indirectly in contact with, that we can use to anchor. Anyway, that's the modern, so to speak, way of thinking.
Ron, you're on mute again.
Josh, come back. I agreed with you. Where are you?
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
I'm here.
I know. It's unusual, but
Wow.
no, I know. Make a note. It's a great day for the Irish. No, what you basically said, I think that if you change the framework, the context, then in that case, they are that you can say something in one context and say the opposite in another context, and neither which is wrong, because they are right in the context that you're using it. To that I agree.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it happens, Josh. It happens.
Well, you see, exercise really lets the blood flow through the brain. So I'm helping you out.
That's because you started walking. It helped me.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Josh. Thank you. Frank, you have been incredibly patient.
Well, thank you. Good conversation. As we're going along, I was thinking that the word fact actually is the elephant, and that we're all kind of approaching defining that elephant from different perspectives. And I like I lean more towards what Roland was saying, and actually what Josh was saying too. And I think some of it was started with with your comment, Ron, about context. When Andy brought in evolution, that really kind of tied it together for me and wanted me to add my particular blind man's view of what the word fact, means. Coming from an evolutionary psychology perspective, fact is, a word in a language that was created by people for a purpose, right? There's a developmental comparative psychologist, Michael Tomasello, who talks about the development of shared attention, leading to shared intention, as the foundation for the secret of our success as a species. So, there's no real great purpose in creating words just to label things. The purpose for creating words was to create a shared intention, that there's purpose, function, that behind the creation of these words. So if you say that it's a fact that um, um, Obama had more people at his inauguration than um, Donald Trump, the context or the purpose of making that statement is to say that he was a very popular person, that there's a purpose behind labeling that as a fact. When Kellyanne Conway says that there were more people at Donald Trump's, her purpose was to say not that there was a physical count, but you would assume that she's using that word for the purpose of saying that Donald Trump is more popular, is the most popular president that we've ever had. She's using that for a purpose from within the context. I think that several people have said. I think that's so critical, right? Because the same notion of fact is being used in a different way, and that function is what I think of as being important. So we label things not so much that we end up with a catalog, but that so that we can define a shared intention about the object. When when the early Homo sapiens, identified fire, it wasn't that, hey, I want to call that fire. It was because there was some action needed to be taken in relation to that object. It was a label to help us focus on a common point of attention so that we can share an intention related to that object. I think Roland was kind of going there. I actually think that part of the way I understood Josh talking, kind of supported that same notion. So I wanted to present that particular perspective, that facts, in terms of just coming up with a catalog, a label for things is kind of useless. That facts to have a common view, a representation that simulates an action is, a more useful notion of facts from my perspective, from an evolutionary psychology perspective. So just wanted to introduce that from, my blind man's view of the word fact. So thanks.
Very interesting. Thank you, Frank. I'm not sure if people created words in order for purpose, or where the words
as opposed to what?
As opposed to linguistically, it's not at all certain that that words were created by people for a reason. It might have been the other way around. That there was the word, and then a purpose was put on it. But it's nobody really knows. But where language actually came from is a very, very deep and dodgy topic. But I understand I understand what you're saying. It makes sense. I'm just not sure that that's the direction it went. I mean, there was fire, right? There was fire. Fire was there. It was made,
right. And then in order to have if you wanted to do something, point out that the fire was going out, point out that the fire is going to cause damage, that, you could point to it. If it was, if you couldn't see the other person, you could make a noise. That noise could eventually become distinctly associated with that particular object that you're pointing to, and that's how the function gets added to that noise, which we call a word or language, right? So anyway, I think that's not a terribly controversial view of the development of language, but I wanted to keep that in here because it kind of goes along with what people were saying in terms of the context. Because words are not just absolute labels. Words have a purpose. And then, the purpose is defined by the context that you're in. And that's why words can have different meanings because they have different effects in different contexts. It's my thought. So.
No, it's fine. It's very, very good. Thank you, Frank. Thank you very much. Michael. Can it?
Sorry. It takes time to find this mute button.
Yeah, okay. I know. I had the same problem.
Sorry, Frank, I like this notion that when we are talking what you may call facts, it's something that corresponds to our shared attention, which leads to shared intention. And this is what matters at the end from practical standpoint. That people somehow have to agree at least on something, and then they have to do something together. And if not this societal need, maybe we would not need even to spend time for debating this common or shared realities that you may or may not call facts or not facts. So that's, I think, some sort of evolutionary perspective on this, that we need to agree on something in order to act together and to survive and to achieve our goals. But I'm very sympathetic to Andres' sentiments about that certain facts we should not easily dismiss them as something like not important or only tentative. And I actually don't think that any facts, including even the facts of physics, are literally eternal, because we know that we live in evolving universe, and the laws of physics could change in principle. And I'm not talking about understanding of our laws, but the laws themselves may have changed, because we observe this universe on a very short segment of its evolution. So the laws can be not constant, and our understanding of these laws, of course, also may change even faster than the laws themselves. But that's the laws of physics. So when we are talking about what some people could call social facts, maybe the facts is less appropriate here, because a lot of this is based on really conventions, on shared norms, standards of behavior, and they of course can change, and they are changing literally sometimes during the life of a single generation. But there are two questions here. First, whether these changes are necessarily to the better. That's a big question. So if we embrace this, how they called it, free sex, or what it was, as an alternative to traditional family, I am not sure that this was really a bad idea. And second, even if we are talking about these standards of behavior, we still need to make sure that we have a good factual understanding of these norms of behavior. And although statistics is known as the bigger lie even than a big lie, right? But still, we cannot ignore it altogether. So if we know from some statistical data that certain changes led to some maybe better outcomes, then it's statistical evidence, it's maybe correlation is not causation, but this is still something that we have to consider. So I guess regarding social facts, they are more relational, more tentative, more context dependent, but still we cannot entirely dismiss them. Or we can, but we will face consequences. And after we face consequences, for us, it will be a fact. So after we meet something really unpleasant in our lives, this will be a fact for us. It's better not to ignore the facts, even with all these caveats about this relational and context-dependent nature. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you. Thank you. James.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I was just wanted to express I was really kind of grateful for the book reference that I got Josh to send because that's apparently a pretty good book. It talks about Aristotle's perspectives on metaphysics. It's Heidegger talking about Aristotle's perspectives on metaphysics, and it turns out to be pretty relevant to this conversation. It's the idea that you can combine, you can both categorize possibilities, but you can also combine them in speech. And it's that combining, which I was talking about before, as important. Of course, in the rebuff I got from Josh was kind of like, well, no, it's both it's kind of like you can't separate them, right? Before you look at them. And no, that's not what Heidegger was saying. He's basically saying that in world formation and the situation and viewing a situation, or what he called world formation here, it's kind of looking at both at the categories, but also a sense of how to combine things that determines what we are able to articulate. We're able to say that an apple is a fruit, but at the same time, that's not a statement about categories. That's a statement of fact. So, and that's basically what Heidegger is saying here, is that we have to, when we make statements, we both are Aristotle's, the view back on Aristotle's wisdom is that we make statements that both combine things, even if it's just an is, and or what was called the copula, from ancient times, or in Latin, but the or is the categorization of what it is. So the categorization, they're both basically what he's saying is that they're both essential. It doesn't contradict that the idea that a fact is always a statement about relation. And I think so. What he's saying in the basic facts of phenomenology is that we just have to realize, or the basic problems of phenomenology is we have to realize the nature of these many things in order to be as well as be able to relate them in speech, and then it becomes something, because it's not something that's not just going to affect us but has the potential for affecting everyone, and it's an expression of ourself, and that's important if you have personal integrity regarding truth and so on. So that's all. I just wanted to close that loop.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you. Thank you. Terry.
The moment you say fact, you're saying the context. So I think one of the things we should do on any definition of a fact is try as best we can to define what that context is. And that includes physics. I think we've had many demonstrations in physics of what we thought was an absolute fact with an absolute scope that never changed and was for eternity, simply didn't turn out to be true. I mean, the whole emergence of quantum theory just brought into doubt the entire concept of an absolute definition of what an object is at a very small level. So I think we have to be humble about that, but we should try to specify the context. Sets of facts that are created in a context specifically for the purpose of hurting people, for confusing something that you know to be true yourself, I think is one of the most evil things that a person can do. And there's no circumstance in which I find that form of contextualism valid. That's just lying on a massive scale. So if you know it's not true, and maybe you convince yourself after a while that it's true, that happens. That's easy for some people to do. They say the lie 3 times, and the 3rd time they believe it themselves. But that doesn't make it's not a good strategy ethically in the long term in any way that I can see to intentionally falsify the context. I did have a question specifically for Andre, which was, you mentioned genders as an absolute. And I genuinely do not know where you're getting that, because it's not from biology. I've met people. I remember a really nice fellow from a conservative church. His daughter or son was born with ambiguous sexuality. And you have to, I mean, that's a fairly high rate in human. And I'm not talking about psychological. You can always debate the psychological, but you sure can't debate the physical instances of something like that. It does happen. So genuine question, I don't understand where you're getting at, because it's obviously a fundamental principle to you, but I don't think you're getting it from biology. So where is it from?
Well, the definition of gender is, for many years, has been inextricable from the definition of sex. So for many years, gender and sex were synonyms. They were one and the same. We don't have that nowadays. We have a new postmodern definition of gender. And it has a new definition with the spectrum, meaning it's not just binary, meaning it's fluid, meaning there's complexity, there's layers, there's a whole scale and a spectrum. I don't recognize that new postmodern definition. I'm going by the classical definition of gender. So when I say gender, I'm going by the tradition.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
But I'm asking the biological question, because you're asking the psychological classification thing. It's not that simple. Biology itself is you go out way outside humans.
Can I try to answer, to comment on this quickly?
I'm fine with it if Ron is.
Yep.
So you are right. From biological standpoint, there are many mutations and many deviations and intermediate cases that are rare. And the fact that are rare is very important, because gender is critical for the role in reproduction. So these 2 genders, they play the 2 different roles in reproduction. And from evolutionary standpoint, this is all that matters.
Yeah, it's outside of
Not,
social construct. It's outside of, I mean, it's just, it comes down to the fundamentals.
Now,
It's really plain and simple. It
now
just comes down.
when the person is born with an
Mhm.
ambiguous gender, like the child of that one person I knew, how do you treat that
Define
person?
ambiguous gender. Define ambiguous gender. What is that? What do you mean by that? Like intersex?
I mean, yeah, I think in their particular, I don't remember which of, there's several variations, and the genitalia were, I think it was dual. There's
Yeah.
different versions, and I don't remember what it was. The doctor could not tell
Yeah.
whether it was a boy or a girl. Now, my
Yeah.
question is, how do you treat that person? Because that's not a decision in terms of lifestyle. That's not a decision in terms
Exactly.
of society.
That's a very,
How
very
do you
important thing.
treat
I'm
that
glad you brought it
person?
Yeah. So that would be basically, sorry, Michael, I'm sorry, that would direct you at me. I'm sorry. I think it's basically just there are anomalies, there are exceptions to the rule outside of the general norm. And there is definitely a distinction there. But like you said, it's not a identity gender. They didn't choose that. They were born with it. That's a big distinction between being born male or female or intersex. And it's a whole other thing to claim to be like the other sex that you were not born with out of the choice of your own self will, right? Or your own decision that was made consciously by yourself. You self declared that, right? That's the distinction.
So I think you're agreeing then that the person who is born that way should be treated as fully as a person, as someone who is born obviously male, obviously female. Even if they're not, and in some of the cases it varies. I've known people who were fully female who were incapable of reproduction because of there's a famous chromosome
I've heard
difficulty.
that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. In fact, ironically, some of the models, some of the most there's a couple of famous models who were actually male by gender, but they were unable to recognize testosterone, and actually as a result became more female in characteristic. So this is fascinating, but they couldn't reproduce. They couldn't reproduce.
So those are different. Those are within nature and not chemical alterations through gender affirming care and things like that. So those are medical alterations that are done purposefully and methodically, and then there are things that happened through a defect of nature. Those are two very different things. Yeah. Yeah. Now, how we address those, that's a great topic to discuss. I'm open for it. But those are the distinctions there. One is voluntary and one is involuntary.
Yeah, and the female version I mentioned about the resistance to testosterone is particularly interesting because those people think they're female. Their emotions are that of a female. Their response is that of a female. They are attracted to men just like a female. Usually they don't find out until they attempt to have children. Then all of a sudden, there was a pretty good science fiction story I saw once where it played on that idea. So, so my point in this is we need to be careful about the kindness issue. That because it's very easy if you have very stark categories and refuse to have any recognition of the biology behind it. It's awfully easy just to put people in just a terrible situation. And how to deal with it, yeah, it's complicated. Life is messy often on things like that. You know, we all have our various genetic problems of a variety of things. Those are just some of the more conspicuous ones. Okay, that was all. Just thank you. Appreciate the feedback.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. William.
Yes, sir. I'm listening to this conversation and I'm just wondering whether we can take the arguments about fact and substitute the word evidence. Evidence is so much liker, it's flexible. It's not, we get tied up in rigid notions of what a fact is, and facts, apparently Terry believes, and I believe in too, that they're interpretations. Facts are outcomes of analysis and factual, not standalone. Evidence has a certain standalone quality about it. And there's junk evidence and there's good evidence. And it's that evidence that is Popper's idea that falsification is a function of the evidence. If evidence shows it's false, it's doubted. And if it shows that it's true, it's at least it's not attacked. And evidence is about what is real and is not in any categorical way something that only has one-up reference. Evidence is relative, and it's a question of a correlative relationship of fact, of evidence to truth or evidence to a proposition. And that's the point, that it solves a lot of problems here. If we took all the factual stuff, alternative facts, taking, for example, Kellyanne Conway, it's a dispute about evidence that she's making. And she's claiming evidence shows something it doesn't show. It's not a claim that it's a fact or an alternative. It's an alternative, or it's stronger or weaker evidence for a proposition. And that seems to clarify a lot of the discussion we've had today. Thank you.
I have a problem with that, William, for the first time. I have a problem with something you said. Evidence. That is like that is a legal type term.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. No, it's fact-free. We have claims about evidence-free propositions coming from the mouths of
one second.
All the time. They have no evidence for them.
Evidence is like an observer.
No.
And that, 1 minute. Evidence is what you see, what you work out. The reason I changed observer to knower is, as far as I'm concerned, is that knowledge is the basis.
I'm not disputing that, Ron. I'm just saying evidence is what we perceive to be in support or not of a proposition. That's all.
Yes,
that's not evidence that is legal or any other kind. It's what all the or journalists assemble. It's what people who are witnesses to events talk about. Their comments and observations are evidence.
We're coming back to fact.
If fact is a conclusion, Ron, that's right. But look at all the problems we're having with talking about fact.
I agree.
Fact is a conclusion. Fact is a reference.
But as you know, the evidence, two people see evidence completely differently.
That's right. And that's why it's a good tool. The evidence is relative to the facts and the context, right?
Right.
All right. So we agree on that. And Wittgenstein would say it's a matter of use. Yes. The guy who wants the brick gets the brick. That's the evidence. It's not a fact one way or the other. It doesn't refer to brick. It says, get the brick. Evidence of fact is not the same as evidence of a proposition, is it?
Okay.
I don't know. I offer that as a reaction to what we've said here, which has been very informative and very wonderful. But I'm saying to you, evidence would clarify the disputes that we're having. And I speak to Andre's idea that words refer to things. They don't. They never did. And Wittgenstein told us that. When he said in paragraph 43, our meaning of a word is its use in the language. And that's the idea.
Say that again, words are not what?
Pardon me?
He's asking, do words, what did you define words as not being?
I understand Wittgenstein to say the meaning of a word is its use in the language. It depends on context, not reference. And I believe we have a dispute about reference here, and we can solve it by saying if it's use, it has purpose, it has circumstantial relevance, it has workability because it works in a situation, in a system of relations that are correlative relationships. So it means nothing more than that, and that means a lot. That's all I'm saying. And 43 says, the meaning of a word, although not in all cases, shall mean the meaning of a word is its use in the language. That's what Wittgenstein said in the investigations. Everyone agree with that?
I'm not a great fan of Wittgenstein, but I won't say anything.
But that's what you agreed to say earlier, Ron.
I'm referring to knowledge, and I don't think that evidence is it can be seen differently, and the knowledge of evidence can be different. And I don't see that evidence is seen by everybody in their own way. You've got two lawyers, they both show their evidence, and they don't agree. A third person has to agree what that evidence, where it comes to, which is the fact. And he might be wrong, or she might be wrong.
That's why we have jury trials.
Exactly.
That's why we have judges.
Exactly. But they might
That's
be
why we have
wrong.
reliable journalists. That's why we trust some people and don't others.
Yeah, that's a problem as well, as we saw last time. I agree with you. But
Okay, good. That's all I wanted to hear.
No, but evidence, I have a problem with the word itself, but that we have to do another time. But I see what you're saying, and I see where you're coming from.
Thank you.
It's fine. It's fine. It's good. Thank you very much, William. Very, very interesting. Michael.
It's a brief comment about this sex gender issue. And it's related to our discussion about the facts. If a child is born with some biological defects that would prevent him or her from becoming a father or mother, then any two doctors would agree on this, that this is a biological problem. So hopefully sometimes it can be treated medically, sometimes it cannot. And even if it is not an obvious medical issue at birth, it could become, as someone mentioned, an issue later. So you can look like a perfect man, but you cannot have children for whatever reason. And again, it should be treated as a medical condition. So if medicine can treat this condition and you can become a father, so do it. Otherwise, well, you're not lucky. But my point is that we have to agree on medical and biological facts and not to confuse them with arbitrary social or cultural constructs. That for those there are no this scientific standards. So that's my comment about this. And now, Ron, you are muted.
Right. Sorry, yes. Thank you. Thank you for telling me. I can't find the button either. Dalia.
Yeah, I found it very quickly this time. So I just have a quick comment about Andre's definition of words, that they cannot change meaning. There is a parable that I was taught at school. It was a German a person called, the author is Peter Dichsel, I guess, Dichsel. And it's called a table is a table. And very quickly, the idea behind it is that it was a very lonely old man who was tired and bored of everything around him. So he decided that, he was thinking, why do people call this thing a table and call this thing a chair, call this thing a clock and this thing a bed? So he was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to change everything. I'm going to call the bed a table, the clock a chair. And, he changed the names of everything. He redefined everything around him. And he kept practicing and practicing and practicing until he mastered this new language he created. And then he went to the street and he tried to communicate with people. But in the end, of course, nobody understood him. And he wasn't sure why nobody understood him. So it's a very, very weird concept, but the idea behind it is that we have to have an agreed upon truth. Whatever truth it might be, a fact, a truth with a lowercase t or an uppercase t, or a reality or a perspective. We have, like, as a society, in the end, we have to have something that we agree on, regardless of our perspectives. We have to, may I say, submit to a general consensus so that we can function. And I think this is the problem of humanity, because no matter how one is trying to be individualistic, we still have to live together and we still have to communicate. We still have to live in a society and create meaning of the life we're living. And without agreeing to one thing, it's going to be impossible. Thank you.
Yes, I agree. But I think, and I mentioned this before, not tonight, but the reason we do get along generally is because it's a small t. It's it's a rough version. It is we understand each other approximately well enough to get along. It's when we dig deep in to find out what do you really mean. That's when the arguments start because we don't really mean the same thing. I think that's what Roland said. We don't mean the same thing. We don't know that we mean the same thing. We don't know. We agree, but I don't know. As Roland said, what that you really agreeing with me? I have no idea. I know what I mean, but do I know what you mean? And that person can't explain it either. So,
Of course, and yeah, there will always be misunderstandings as well, depending on the context, and that's why people get offended easily, right?
yeah,
Because some people believe in something and people don't believe in that, and then all this happen. But in the end, as a society, we cannot function without like a mutual
Standards.
acceptance of something, right?
yes,
Of a norm, a social norm or something. And
yes,
this, unfortunately, this has to become a fact so we can accept it and live with it. Otherwise, it will be a torment. Life will be unlivable, unbearable.
you're right. I agree with you. Thank you very much, Dahlia. This is your first time, isn't it, with us? Am I wrong? I think Dahlia's muted herself. Dahlia, can you hear me? Ah,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm
no.
saying yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, it's my first time, but
Ah,
I'm enjoying it a lot. Hopefully, it's not the last time.
no, we're enjoying what you're saying, Dahlia.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for
Appreciate
coming.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's humbling. Thank you.
James.
Yeah, just further on that, I think possibility is really important because it is kind of like Heidegger talks about it in that passage, that metaphysics passage, about moving from kind of like this is the mechanism of moving from possibility to actuality. In other words, the what could be called the categorization and combining that we need to do, in order to sort of form a statement, which Wittgenstein, whether you consider him interesting or important, said is just simply a function of the language, but then that casts a lot of doubt on this idea of evidence gathering, which has some merit. But I think the merit is that it applies pressure, just like a lot of things. It applies pressure to the estimation of what is possible and what is what is actually actual, and not just a possibility. And then what becomes actual to us, when we believe it is an actuality, we call it a fact. So, and I don't think there's any problem with the definition of facts here, although some people get it confused with truth and absolute truth. And somebody brought up absolute truth and said, well, what about if it's absolute truth, like what you believe if you're in a religion? Uh, Something like that. And the fact is that whenever it's an absolute truth, you have choices. Like in the 19th century, Fichte and Hegel defined systems for kind of like talking about and considering whether, and some other philosophers, Jacobi was one of them. They talked about the possibility of considering the absolute as a different category of information, and that we should take the absolute, we should consider the absolute logically in a slightly different frame than we consider anything that needs adjustment in order to be estimated.
Yeah,
So
thank you very much.
I'm sorry if I'm too long.
No, it's fine. Thank you very much, James. Thank you. Where are we? We disappeared. Okay, John. Oh no, there he is. Andy. Andy. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I thought I'm trying to wear my philosophy hat more often than my biology hat. But the question that was raised earlier, and I forgot the person's name, well, Andre, but the person that responded to him is correct. Biologically or genetically, the genes do mix, and this has been known for a long time that a small percentage of people come out with a combination of the sexes. Okay, that I think is well established biologically. But here's the issue that I've heard over the years: which predominates, genetics or culture? So people would say it's nature versus nurture. So if you're a conservative person, however, politically, philosophically, religiously, you're going to say it's culture. So I can influence your behavior, your lifestyle, your choices if I just impose enough culture on you or religion. And then the other people say the opposite. There can't be much that can be done, and so on. So I just wanted to mention that that's what I've heard over the years from religious people, because I was a geneticist. So I was working with the very things they were not doing anything weird. It was with microorganisms. But I heard all of these arguments, and that's what I heard as the comeback, that things were fixed. You're either a man or a woman. And when you explain to them that there's a crossover sometimes, they can get things that are, hermaphrodites, we used to call them, or whatever. They understood that to a degree, but they always thought in the end that culture prevails, that you can influence that person in one form or another, but it's just coming back to the same age-old questions now.
Yep.
Of which is prevailing.
Thank you very much, Andy. Was this your first time? I think it was, wasn't it?
No, actually not. I remember the trust.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Great.
Yeah, and one before that. It's actually my third.
Okay, great. Wonderful. So I look forward to seeing you after the holiday, as it were. We're going to cut this short. It's been a long... okay, Josh, have a short run this time.
Okay. Well, I've got another couple hours left. But
yeah, well.
I'll let you rest. I like what Dahlia was saying. I wanted to just maybe push it a little bit in direction and see what you and Dahlia think of it. There's still, I get the sense, a certain emphasis on starting from the subject and then moving out and then asking the question, how is we, beginning as subjects, forming our own perspectives and such, how can we ever get to be able to understand each other? And when you start from that vantage, then it becomes a concern. The question is a question in the first place because you've already split off the subject from the social relations. Whereas, if you think of somebody like Heidegger, he says we're thrown into a world. We're already thrown into a world. Well, what he means by that is that even in the womb, our own interpersonal sense of things is already shaped by at that point, interactions with the mother, and then as soon as we are born, every interaction already participates in our sense of ourselves. So we don't have to ask the question, how do we go from this isolated, autonomous subject to somebody that can participate in society? We're never split off to begin with. It's not a question of moving from nothing, isolation, to social agreement, but of moving from within more limited communities in which we kind of understand each other, not completely, but that we're able to, that we're already participating within at least partially shared norms to more extensive communities. That's where we get into trouble. We get into trouble when this community over here, has to put up barriers around their kinds of intelligibility because they don't recognize the intelligibility of that community over there. They're incorrect. They're not understanding the world in the correct way. That type of thing. So that seems to me more the issue that we have to concern ourselves with. Not that we start from scratch in terms of our relation to a community, but it's one of having the openness to rethinking and transforming our own kind of norms of intelligibility so that we can, if not accommodate, but at least not actively want to destroy the others in the name of what of correctness. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Josh. Carry on walking, and I will feel much better. Thank you. See you next time. Michael, is your hand up? Yes.
I just forgot to lower it. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So in that case, I wish you all happy whatever, and very much look forward to seeing you next time. I've got 2 months rest, and I'll see you next time with some more non-controversial topics. Okay, so bye everybody. Keep well. Look after
Bye.
yourselves. Bye.